multi-balls.
Gentlemen, it is 4 p.m. here on Thursday, February 13th. It's the day before Valentine's Day. Can you feel the love tonight? The love for pinball and RPGs. This is the worst intro I've ever done. Everyone, welcome to Joystiq Streams. My name is Anthony John Agnello, Community Manager of Joystiq, and we have many a special guest here with us today to play Rollers of the Realm. The people that are actually making this game. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
I'll go ahead. I'm Dave Evans. I'm the game director of Rollers of the Realm, and I'll throw it to Tony.
Yep, my name is Tony Walsh. I'm the founder of Phantom Compass and a ne'er-do-well team member on Rollers.
And the gentleman who will be pinning the balls and leveling the characters?
Sure.
That didn't sound like I wanted it to at all. Is Mr. Richard Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm the
Fuse
one
content director.
making the mouse cursor go crazy right now.
He's doing it.
Do you guys have a podcast by chance? Because you both have lovely radio voices. I'm just gonna say.
You talking to us?
Yeah, you're talking to me.
Hey, it could be a new business for us. Are you kidding me? Podcasting, man, that's serious business.
I think you talk about pinball.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and fire up the game here and hope that the sound is still working. I actually played a little bit of the campaign earlier today, but I think it would behoove people to see it in action. So.
Yeah, so Dave, do you want to give us a little overview of Rollers of the Realm?
Yeah, sure. It was conceived as pretty much a straight-up mashup between pinball and role-playing, and it was conceived in a small room, little clandestine meeting of some AAA game devs who had been brought in from the cold by Tony Walsh and Phantom Compass, and we sort of talked about what could we do in making a game with Phantom Compass, and very slowly many of us got hired by Phantom Compass, and we decided that this was something we could do in a couple months, and lo and behold, 2 years later, we have a full-blown Unity 3D game that is hopefully very attractive to pinball players, and we've taken all the stuff that pretty much everything you see on some level at RPGs and packed it into pinball play.
Speaking of what everyone can see, apparently the game is not showing up, so
it's just very dark.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I'm gonna fire the game up again and see if the stream won't properly catch it. So, 1 second. But you all can continue talking about it and just explain to people how lovely it is.
This is the bold vision of Rollers of the Realm, is not being able to see all of the medieval pinball action.
Absolutely. Well, that's always a good way to start, is you don't want to give away too much in the beginning.
There's a lot of nighttime levels. It builds tension.
Yeah.
As Soraya Shadow Harper says in the chat, the gamma is way too low.
Aha!
Get it brighter. Since you guys started development on the Rollers of the Realm, how many pinball wizard jokes have you had to endure? How many references to the Who have happened since you guys started doing this?
More importantly, Tony is a massive karaoke guy, and that's pretty much
There we go.
what we do as a company. And yes, many a time we have dragged people through Pinball Wizard.
That makes me so happy. I'm thrilled that actually happened.
Many a time being once, by the way, and then I was told
Never again. Never again. Yeah.
Ah, there's the game.
Yeah, there we go.
There it is.
And if I can just do one more thing. There.
Faux Ben in the chat has informed us that someone tilted the machine too much.
Oh,
and
you know
everything
what?
went black.
That's my fault. I'm sorry. I
Tilted.
wasn't even thinking. So here, now I will actually get the story rolling. As I do all this stuff live, reshaping fate. So here's Rollers of the Realm, the title screen, and here is the campaign footage that you missed a moment ago. So
I defied. Sorry, go ahead.
we have a full-on, like a real full RPG story going on. You would have no idea this is a
great
pinball game.
warriors were granted immortality
Not
and
yet.
immense power with which to rule our land. Yeah, as so often happens in hard times.
Yeah, so at
And
what
then you switch it
what you know, what games
Curse the
would you
three
guys say
warriors and
were
imprison
the
them for
direct
eternity.
inspirations where you thought to
Flipping
yourself,
the land into endless
what are we going to
chaos.
take and we're
Can you
gonna
believe this
we're gonna
tale?
build our
It
own
is
thing that
fitting
we
of our
love?
realm.
You know, like what pinball cabinets
Conflict is
were
endless.
your favorites
And there
that
hasn't been a
sort of
king
went
or
into
upstart that
this,
doesn't claim to
that
be
the
one of the
spirit
true
of them
warriors in
survives
combat.
in Rollers of the Realm?
They always
The
promise the same
direct
thing.
influence was
War on
Pinball
tyranny.
Quest, which of course wasn't a
War is
cabinet game.
tyranny.
It was an old Nintendo
It took my family.
game which did basically
village.
this, and we thought this hasn't been done in a while, and we could take
It's as
this
if the
pretty
war was
far.
declared on me.
In terms of
As if I were the
you know
witch.
what, the main inspiration's
So
been
here
a
I
lot
am,
of digital pinball
roaming
tables
from
in
town to
particular.
town.
A lot of
In
the
search
stuff,
of a little coin
the Zen pinball stuff,
from the
really trying to
pockets of
see
those
what
who would
people are
profit in
looking
these
for
times.
in terms of simulation, and then in a way, it's like somewhat distancing ourselves from really being a pinball simulator. We wanted to basically we're playing more to the elements of RPG and making a pinball mechanics work for combat and things like
The
that. So.
pickings will be in town.
Because we
head for
didn't
the
really want to be in
gates.
competition with simulators, we wanted to make a standalone game.
And I think, and something people are going to see here as I start playing, what I really like about what I've played so far is the sort of character that's imbued in all the different balls. They are actually different characters, but you have some control over their motion, and the levels, they play out like, you know, almost like an action game level or a role-playing game, and not necessarily like a pinball table. It's like somewhere in between.
Yeah, I think it's conceived more as, in a way, like the original Zelda games, where you move room to room,
You'll need to distract
and
the guards so I
and
can
there's
keep
a heavy
fast.
influence on exploration.
boy?
And really, most pinball tables are so bloody confusing with all the lights and things that there is there's always exploration within tables, and I think that works. And but yeah, it's obviously we're shading more towards the story elements and the RPG elements than pinball on the surface, outside of the physics, the obvious things we're doing.
Well, right now, what you see is me playing as this pickpocket thief character. And true to that character, whenever the ball runs into one of these citizens, you snatch some of their money away from them, which is really cool. And right now I'm building up some magic to summon my special ability, which is she calls in her faithful dog.
Yeah, and this was the very beginning of developing this game was really us sitting down and trying to think of all the mechanics of that are present in RPG and how they might relate to pinball. What's multi-ball? Well, that's like a pet. It's a pet class.
Oh,
and
look at the little
you know
rascal.
how do you collect points? Well, different characters can collect points in different ways, and that speaks to them being it develops their character as a thief or not.
Tony, I saw you address this in the chat already, but there was some curiosity about whether or not this was a Unity-based game, and you said yes, Rollers of the Realm in its current state was built on Unity. What's been your guys' experience using the Unity engine to build your games? Or do you like its flexibility? What do you have to say?
Yeah, there's some really great attributes of it. I think the multi-platform publishing is probably the biggest feature, and the ease of development. It certainly seems to be a good tool for rapid development. I'm not on the tech side of the company, so I can't speak too much about the nuts and bolts, but it's definitely our preference as far as core technology goes. Prior to working in Unity, we'd been mostly a Flash shop doing kids games, and partnering up with David and some of our AAA team members was a real transition point in the studio's history. So that's the best thing we ever did, and it's the best technology that we've used so far.
You know, that's something that fascinates me, making that jump from, making kids games is a very, very specific audience, and I think a lot of people have this perception that making kids games has a specific style. How has, that background sort of informed the development of Rollers of the Realm?
Well, I think with kids games, you're trying to show how to play the game as opposed to having a lot of explanation text. It has to be, really, really simple to play, and, that's something that's tough to do for grown-up games. And I mean, you guys can probably see in the stream here, we have these like very bright green instructional pop-ups and whatnot. The menuing system, actually, we're going to do a little bit of a retool on. For anyone who doesn't know, the game is currently in beta. We're about 3 months roughly from final. And we are looking at stuff like the user experience and the user flow. And I think, I had a long history in doing kids content, as does the other co-executive producer, Erica, on this project. And I think we take a lot of the simple, elegant things that the best kids games do and try to bring some of that ease of play to grown-up games.
I don't want to interrupt this really wonderful conversation you guys are having, but I hope that everyone saw me both get the key and the chest in about 5 seconds.
Yes.
Richard Mitchell with the multi-ball skills.
I also, there's something I love too. Whenever the thief bumps into someone and steals their money, she says something like, "Oh, excuse me, pardon me," steals a little bit of gold. One of my favorite things she says is she just says, "Yoink."
Is that a Simpsons drop? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, it's a little Simpsons joke.
Never.
Never happened.
Yeah.
Never happened. Gothic Medic is curious if this is going to be on any platforms besides PC at launch.
At launch, probably not, although we do have a functioning Mac build, and it is a platform that we want to get to. It has some idiosyncrasies right now that are slightly different from the PC version, but I think all of that can be pretty simply smoothed out. What we're a little wary of, because we're such a small studio, is releasing on too many platforms on launch day, and then having so many customers to support right from day one. So, I mean, I've seen other developers get challenged by a success. I mean, I hope that we have that kind of problem in a way. It's a good kind of problem to have, but I also don't want to leave customers in the lurch. But that being said, we are trying to bring it to as many platforms as possible, and that includes desktop and consoles and other devices as well.
Do we get the Sega Dreamcast version of Rollers of the Realm? Is that... You guys have...
If Unity publishes to it, yes.
Yeah, they're going to get right on those Dreamcast conversion tools.
I'm curious how you all feel about the console space now in general, because in the last year or two, Sony especially, and Nintendo, and now Microsoft is getting on board too, making it much easier for independent developers to get their content onto these big mass market consoles.
Yeah, Dave, you're from the console world. Maybe you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, this back when we were first talking about this game, my first thought was Xbox Live Arcade, for obvious reasons, and just knowing the success of the pinball titles and things like that. But we knew that the big hurdle would be, we might have to publish on Community, or will we get dev kits, and how would they're not necessarily the easiest to work with, and Sony's always had a better reputation on that side, but since it was probably at IndieCade, that's when it all sort of became pretty apparent that they're looking to invite the indies aboard. And I think this game probably plays best on a console with a controller and certain known reliable things like that. I mean, it's going to be still going to work very well on the PC, but I can't help but think the console is a good place for it.
Well, I'm playing with a Xbox 360 controller right now, just so everyone knows. And you're going to see one of the central mechanics of the game now is that I have acquired another character. Now I have the knight, and I have this pickpocket thief character. You can actually change characters, and I think it's really novel the way they do this, because it's something everyone does in pinball, is whenever you trap the ball on one of the flippers, you can then switch characters.
Yeah, it was that was a pretty obvious thing we wanted to do pretty quickly. Is how do you actually how do you always honor pinball convention? That was something we always came back to. And then there was a talk about wanting to swap on the fly, and not wanting to have to wait for the ball to return to the flipper and these sorts of things. And as sort of our prototyping evolved, we realized that there were these perfect opportunities to in a way instruct people on, people will use the trapping in other ways to make shots. It's a nice doubling up of teaching a mechanic that's useful in pinball and in our game. and we try to do a lot of that, doubling up on the use of mechanics.
So this level's a pretty good demonstration of what I was talking about earlier about how the level design, they're not necessarily tables, they feel kind of like levels in a traditional action game. And right here we have sort of like you have to move the flippers as if they were doors to get through them. It's almost like you have to sort of solve a puzzle to figure out how to get through the map.
Yeah, we've I don't know what our percentage is, but I think as trying to broaden, if this was just a what do you call it, an RPG, because of the pinball and the obvious things you could do to broaden, pinball is a fairly broad appeal, you'd probably liken it to something that's more of an action RPG, something that would have platforming and stuff. And I think we've given nods to platforming later on in the game because of the nudge mechanic, your ability to tilt the ball side to side. You can actually bounce literally on platforms and move to spaces, and the game action moves away from the flippers often, and that's really a mechanic of just physics in general. But it does at least acknowledge tilt, although we don't penalize tilt. Tilt's like dexterity. It's analogous to dexterity, and certain characters, the ones you'd expect to have dexterity, are very nudgeable on the board.
Well, and the knight, for example, who's got a bit of a drinking problem. You can't really nudge him very well. He kind of stumbles.
Yeah, and he has wonky physics, and we're still working on the sweet spot for that too, to balance frustration with hilarity.
Yeah, so, he will lurch unexpectedly from side to side, and it's can provide some pretty funny game moments.
Yeah, and I mean that's the type of thing I always love, is when people don't rely on exposition to explain a character, and it's such a great thing to be able to pare down that idea to something as simple as pinball. Think of all the different things that pinball can do, their size, the way they move, and start creating character with just simple mechanics. I think that's a lot of fun.
Something, it took me years when I was a kid to realize that pinball tables were something that you could win. That there was actually, a set of conditions that, do these things on the table and you will succeed at a goal. And it's, it's such a sort of old-fashioned and very difficult to translate mechanic. So tell me about how you went into thinking about the visual design of the pinball boards to tell people visually what they were supposed to be doing, besides just putting a big green light on some paddles.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's again, there was this nice parity between what you tend to do in some role-playing games, adventure type games, where there's a certain amount of table exploration. There are things that you don't have to get. There's a treasure chest, for example, you just grab the key for, and you could go back and grab that treasure chest. And to me, that's analogous to the way a pinball table opens up to you. You bang around for a few minutes, and then you start realizing, okay, this is I'm hitting a certain number of targets, and when these targets are all knocked down, the table goes into a certain state. And to me, that really isn't much different from the way a game opens up as you explore it.
Yeah.
Here's my chance to get that chest after all.
Do it, Richard.
Just a kid, eh?
So, between the conception phase, I mean, obviously, you guys are very close to release. Rollers is going to change a little between now and when it's finally available, but you're getting there. What is an idea that you came up with in the early planning stages of the game that you tried to implement and it just didn't work?
Oh, that's a good question, man. We got so much of the ideas into this in some form. And honestly, we still muse about stuff. Oh, that'll be DLC. That'll be, I'm trying to think. You know what? There's one mechanic that.
Yes, I got it.
That isn't fully realized in this one. Is we do have a certain amount of stealth in this game where there'll be enemies that are in a sort of a guard state, and you can avoid them. You can avoid them, and you don't have to fight them. And one thing we had this one crazy board that we did not put together or finish, where there was enemies walking on patrols, and you had to time all your shots as you moved around this play space, and the whole goal was about not hitting them. And we thought that was novel enough, but it was just complex enough and just slightly strange and anti-intuitive enough that we pulled it out. But I think I'd like to see that in another incarnation of this game.
There's definitely playfields that were made that aren't going to be in this launch version of the game, but we will find ways probably to add content over time, whether that'll be just in patches or it'll be proper DLC. I'm not sure yet, but there is a lot of like cutting room floor material that we've had a lot of time now to think about. Well, if we were going to bring this back, now that we've been through the whole production process, what would we change and how would we improve it? Because there's some real gems that are kind of waiting to get added back. So I'd like to see some of those emerge over time.
How do you decide? When you do have those excess ideas, and you want it all in the game, but you want to make sure the thing is balanced exactly right, and it is what it is when you get it out there for people to play. How do you go through the process of saying this is an idea that we like so much that we want to add it later? And balance that with, here's an idea that is so big, we want to save it for a sequel or another game. How do you balance that process?
I guess it's funny. I guess that it's tricky, and part of it is, I think, often when you say let's leave it for another game, it's often just a way of us, having fallen in love with an idea, realizing we can't take it all with us into this one game. So it's we'll re-examine it when we come back to it. But it's usually something that was too technically difficult to do right out of the gate. But a lot of this stuff came together so quickly and easily. I can't say enough about Unity and the way that you make these things called prefabs, and especially for something in pinball, where you can basically apply physics and stuff to objects, attach weird things to other things, and you can really just immediately throw it into the play space and try it out. And that's how the development of the different widgets and setups went. And honestly, just something stuck. It was probably more of a feel thing than anything else. And there was a few levels we pulled off, really just to say, what's the core of the game from a story perspective. And I think a lot of these side levels are going to work back in, and that's an assessment we're still going to make. We have roughly 20 levels that are sitting on a back burner, and I think we'll probably resurrect our favorite 5 maybe of those for special side rooms and stuff for the game.
I think just for everyone watching, that last level was pretty cool. I was like in a pinball game, leaping from rooftop to rooftop, which was pretty neat.
Yeah, we didn't put parkour in the tagline, but there it is.
I also, it's just plain ballsy to say I'm gonna tell a story in a pinball game. And there is a school of thought out there amongst critics and game designers and publishers and everybody in the field that games shouldn't spend time on story. Games shouldn't spend. It should just be about mechanics, and that's that. So what sort of captivated you about trying to tell a story, and how do you tell a story through pinball? Like, how do you make sure that you're not interrupting things too frequently for dialogue and all that?
Well, the first thing is, don't rely on dialogue too heavily to tell your story. Tell a story you can track with some voiced voice acting in some minor areas. That would be the first thing. And honestly, especially in me moving from AAA to indie games, there's just so much less pressure and expectation from a marketing standpoint with these games. You can really take more risks and in this space, and it's also the iteration time isn't as costly, so you don't end up in those situations where you have to be so careful with your story because you're not going to suddenly rearrange levels because there's so much work goes in these levels or cut things. You can it's more organic, and it's a great space to work in. Honestly, you could tell a great story with a side-scrolling platformer. I mean, and again, there's so many things physically, mechanically that lend itself to storytelling. Really, it works better too. That it's in a way this is an ensemble piece of characters that come together, and they're all introducing new mechanics and elements of fun, and it doesn't take much to set them up and have them do interesting things.
Aside, cur, or I'll blacken your tongue.
But it's a
very good at this game.
You have my dog, and I would like him back.
You're just gonna throw that out there, Richard?
Although I appear to be fighting a boss now, so
I'll feed you my boots instead.
Are there different difficulty settings? Is Richard on very easy? Is that what's happening right now?
I've seen this go much worse. We've brought this game to a few shows already, and it's yeah. Sometimes it's, and you know what? You're identifying one of the biggest tricks to this is pinball is not inherently easy. It's easy for anybody to pick up and start banging a ball around, but as soon as you have to do anything intentional, it becomes less easy. And this game's been carefully balanced, at least the initial levels, to really sort of allow people to move through it. But you're exceptionally good, Richard, I have to say.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Flattery
Way to
will
jinx
get
it.
you everywhere.
Yep.
I gotta save my dog.
Rise, my friend.
But a lot of the real hardcore pinball players, they'll be playing the arcade mode and replaying levels with specific new challenges in it, and looking for basically side quests and things like that, which will be more challenging because we don't have to obviously balance it for people being able to finish it.
Could you
Tell
talk
us
a little bit
about
the
some
arcade
of
mode?
these side quests.
Yeah.
What are the side quests?
Well, basically, there are a few points in the game where you can choose to move. There's a couple different paths you can choose. You can always go back and try the other path at any point, but there's a couple boards that are optional in each of these levels. I don't believe the first board has this, but the second chapter does have at least one optional level. But the idea is you can go back and play these levels, and there's a persistent game world that exists where, for example, if you were to come back here after playing the next level, the militia that basically this guy, you need to know the story, is the brother of a baron who holds a militia, and they come into the town, and that's why you're leaving town. You're trying to escape and find an outlaw camp to hide. But if you come back to town, there will be a militia here. There'll be new challenges, new fights, and new rewards, more gold to collect, items to find. So there is basically the game has this sort of this open element to it, where even when you finish the game, you can obviously go and play arcade boards, which are themed as sort of medieval tournaments, or you can come back and continue to play versions of the board that get harder every time you complete elements in it.
What is this blacksmith's problem?
Yeah.
Why is he such a dog hater?
Yeah.
Just hammering on metal will do that to you, man. It's the constant toil.
Get up. There we go. Dog.
See, I like that you're bringing your characters back.
I can't just let him die.
Hell no.
I like that all these scenes become a metaphor in a way, because I mean these are just pinballs, but the story is that I am a pickpocket sicking my dog on this evil blacksmith, which is
Richard, aren't we all just pinballs? Getting bounced around by life.
it's like describing or explaining Mario to someone who's never heard of it before. You know? So, well, you run around and you eat mushrooms, and that makes you big, and then you eat a flower, and you can throw fireballs. It sounds ridiculous, but it's like normal for everyone who's ever played video games before.
That seems so much more normal than what's taking place. The ball metaphor is very simple. Like, this is clearly a character. It's not like, so you're a fat guy with a mustache, and he hates turtles, and and he eats mushrooms and gets gigantic. I like that Rollers of the Realm is it's art, the veil of abstraction, video gamey abstraction, is actually pretty thin. Like the pinball thing will invite you right into this world. I kind of like that.
Yeah, and that was one of the first questions we asked and thought about is we decided to completely abstract the pinball, in that you just have to accept that it is a character. But once we do that, we don't apologize for that again in the game.
That's great. That's perfect. And like the color differentials and the size differentials, like the fact that the dog is a little bit smaller than the thief makes perfect sense. Like that's enough. That indicator is perfect.
Well, and the knight, The reverse is larger than the
Too
thief.
quick for ya.
Can't fit through the same spaces.
Yeah, and it's funny, the mechanics just come together so nicely in that you immediately end up with these again, analogous connections to role-playing, where you have a character you'd expect to be more defensive and stronger will be less likely to sewer because he's larger, whereas a more vulnerable character like the thief relies on her maneuverability to keep from sewering.
Yeah, something you all aren't seeing is how that I can actually influence the direction of the ball by pressing a direction on the D-pad. So you can't really see that, but the thief is able to do that pretty well.
Yeah, and then of course she also fits into smaller spaces. So the same thing that allows her access is what is a liability, of course, in a fight, where she will then, of course, slip into things. And we even have the different characters break objects at different rates. So we have some levels later on where it's normally a nuisance to, you have to bring in a stronger character to smash through the crates. We'll have levels where there's breakable fences where you'll fall into chasms and stuff like that, and then you'll want to bring your light, sure-footed character out there so that the knight would just go out there and break through the fence and fall to his death instantly. Whereas you bring the rogue out who can hit a fence or a crate several times before breaking through it. So all these things again play in and remind you without exposition who these characters are and what their purposes are.
I'm curious, this has so many of just like, you instantly recognize it as an RPG because of the sort of like pseudo-medieval setting. You automatically see guys, in little leather jerkins carrying swords, and you're like, all right, RPG, I see it. What kind of leeway do you have when you're designing this thing to say, we're going to play against expectation? You're already playing against expectation by making it pinball, but how do you say we're gonna mess with this milieu? We're gonna make the different sort of RPG. This is how we're gonna make it our own.
Yeah, I mean, I think I certainly wanted to push it away from high fantasy, and this is more of just my own sensibilities in the kind of genre I like.
I died.
But I like I like the idea that magic is special in the world. That we do have a specific concept for magic that's discovered as you play the game, and there will be powerful things and special sort of more typical medieval things, but they're revealed later. And for me, it's more about wanting everything in the world that we introduced to be special. Outside of that, though, we wanted it to be familiar. We're not, it's already novel that we're putting these two genres together. So we certainly didn't set out to create some sort of complete sidestepping convention. If anything, I suppose it lines itself closer to Monty Python than Lord of the Rings, possibly. I think would be the best way to describe it, and I felt good about that.
That's a great comparison point. So what is, David, what's the fantasy literature? Like, obviously, you point to Monty Python, you point to the Holy Grail, and how fast does a pinball fly when compared to an African swallow?
Yes.
But what other... European swallow. What is your favorite color? We're just going to descend into quotes at this point.
That's a good idea.
What is the other sort of fantasy literature and media that gets your goat, that fed into this?
Oh, I think the thing I couldn't resist is again, when you're going to mash up something, I thought, what, let's not go halfway. Let's, this isn't fun, arcadey, silly sort of fantasy. This is, aside from the fact that our characters are kind of squat and have those proportions that you might see in something a little lighter. That, by the way, more plays to them looking right when you're hitting them. You need to stock your little characters to be bumpers, I think. But anyhow, outside of that, I couldn't help but think of George R. Martin Game of Thrones type things where we would be able to eventually open this up into maybe some sweeping political epic.
There's a little less sex in our game.
I was just going to say, there might be some difficult physicality things going on.
Should I be worried about like brothers and sisters? That's my question.
With the caveat that there's a general audience aimed for this. So yes, that would be the big difference. But in the fact that we're not really straight. If you look at the characters in it, they're marginalized characters that could exist in a sort of a pseudo fictional medieval world, and they're just not necessarily the typical heroes you would find. Again, there's something attractive about that for me, and ultimately, I don't want to be afraid or shy away from even dealing like that. It's still a little bit trivial in it being a video game, but not to completely shy away from things. Even with pinball, like how far can you take them? We have this fairly epic score. We have we have voice acting. We've done all
the
things.
voice acting is really great. It really brings the characters
it's very
out.
Nice.
Yeah, and the characters progress not just in an RPG sense, but they also progress in a story sense and character sense, and it's the whole thing. Dave's done a great job of making sure it's a cinematic experience.
Man, getting great voice performances is just so difficult. It can go so wrong so quickly. Like, what is the secret? How did you guys go about making sure that you had vocal performances that were what you wanted?
Well, my background was live action film before I came to games. I've been in games for about 8 years now, but so that was my wheelhouse, and we did it with a full cast. We didn't skimp too much on the paying the actors, and we made it I made it a priority, and I think it's paid off. And I did the directing and stuff, and it's and you know what, we spent a lot more time and took it a lot more seriously than people often do, where I actually talk to the actors beforehand. I didn't just hand them a script and have them scream and grunt and yell, because they expect that often, where they show up and they're going to lose their voice, and whereas I made sure they knew what they're getting into, and that I was taking it seriously and cared about it, and I think that was reflected. And to be honest, we did get lucky with our main some of the main characters we cast. They're phenomenally good actors. And
shout out to Maya Woloshin.
Yeah, so that didn't have to happen. I think it was likely we were going to get someone pretty good, but we lucked out.
This was not. I randomly ran into a woman a few weeks ago who had done a lot of work in game voice acting about 10 years ago, sort of the end of the PlayStation 2 era, and had done a lot of work with Sony. And I was like, she'd gotten out of voice acting, and I said, why did you want to stop doing this? And she was like, I couldn't take the grunting anymore.
It's true, though. 9 times out of 10, you show up in that studio in a game, and you're going to spend your last hour screaming, grunting, dying.
Yeah.
It's what happened. And I can't say that we didn't do a little bit of that. We did.
It's essential. It's essential. Yep. You gotta have that in there. It's so strange. Whenever my wife is watching me play games, she always says, why are the characters, moving so much? Even when they're idle.
Right, yeah.
They're breathing really heavily, and they're, making the occasional grunting sound. And how do you go about deciding this is the amount of humanizing little ambient characteristics we're going to put on a character? Like, how do you decide what's going to make them seem alive as opposed to just sort of being a game artifact?
Well, in this case, there was a sort of an interesting challenge that obviously we want the characters to take up positions, and we want them to be somewhat inactive. We want them to move to locations and be bumpers and widgets, essentially. To be perfectly frank, there's not a whole lot of that in here. Characters are more defined by the little things they say, the VO that comes in every once in a while, and by their general appearance. And I wish I had a really smart answer for the lot of the care that went into
well, sound design. A lot of it was sound design.
Yeah, it was
deciding.
A lot of that.
Yeah, who would say what when, making sure there's not too much repetition. But each character has little taglines and little sayings, and that's pretty enjoyable as you work your way through the game.
There was some talk in the chat earlier about who was doing the music, and the music is wonderful. How did you find, it looks like there were a bunch of different people, Dark Productions, Troy Morrissey, and Penka Kuneva, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yep, yeah, she's done a few other video games as far as I know. I think she worked on some Blizzard products. Anyway, she's Googleable and quite nice. I think she met up with our co-producer Erica at GDC last year, and Troy's been great to work with. So he's a local Toronto, audio guy and sound designer, composer, musician. Yeah, the music really shaped up really well. It sounds great.
One thing to note for people watching this right now, if you take a look at my flippers, they actually have health bars that are decreasing as these soldiers are shooting them with arrows.
I'm here to help.
And they start to take damage over time and become less useful.
Is there a way to heal? Can you use items to heal your?
Well,
flippers?
there's actually a healer ball, Anthony, and that's
Healer
who I'm
ball?
playing as right now. She's the healer, and that's what she does.
Yeah, the healer's brought in, and anytime she collects mana from the world, she also heals flippers. So it basically, takes a classic, healer class, which often are fairly inactive, and forces them into action, and saying that every time you collect a point, you heal back a little bit of your flipper. So she doesn't do a lot of damage, but there are bonuses with using her. She's less susceptible to being hit toward the flippers. She's somewhat maneuverable, and she collects mana faster than other characters. So she has this all-around support class thing where you'll constantly come back to using her. But as you level her up and she becomes more proficient, you'll use her in smaller spurts as you're getting aptly destroyed.
Then one aspect of the game that we haven't touched on yet is the upgrade system, which right now we're just looking at ways to kind of improve that from a player standpoint. But as you level up, it'll unlock different types of items that you can purchase and equip for your characters, and there's hirelings that are available. You're just so good that you haven't had to use that stuff yet, but you can back out to the world map and go to a little port and then see various characters and the types of equipment that they can get. But just bear in mind that whole menuing system we're looking at retooling a bit.
You've mentioned that you want to retool the menu system a couple of times. Why does it need to happen? Why have you decided the menu system isn't working?
Clunky. So we do a lot of player testing, play testing, user testing, and we've had this thing out at so many events and shows, and just watching people play, watching friction points, where they start to, they don't understand how to do something, or where, a lot of people ask, well, where are the actual RPG elements? Are there items? Are there, stats? So bringing some of that to the forefront will help people understand that your character does actually have statistics, that there are specific mechanics that drive the gameplay, and that certain types of items will affect those statistics, more like, a traditional RPG where you can see, if I purchase this item, it'll raise my minimum damage to this or whatever. Right now it's a little underused as well because it's just not placed well in the gameplay flow. So what we're going to do between play fields, when you complete one, or if you're defeated, you're going to get invited to go to the port and do upgrades if you want to. So that's based on gold collection. We may also introduce a way to kind of get random drops so that the full array of inventory is not necessarily available to you, that you might have to do a little grinding to unlock some of that stuff.
Okay, so I'm
Who's
looking at some of the stuff
Who's this gentleman? This gentleman with the bow and the hawk. Who is that guy?
Oh, he's the hunter.
It's the hunter?
Yes, he's the woodsman who, I'm trying to think, well, he has a ranged attack, which is his defining feature, but I don't think we have it hooked up yet, but eventually he will be immune to mana drain from vermin, if anybody, So when you're attacked by rats, you bring him out, because he's okay with that.
Okay, I should have been buying these upgrades forever.
Yeah, that's a good one. That fine dagger is quite useful. Yes, the rogue has a backstab. Sorry, I realize it's probably a leg, so I don't know what you're looking at, but there's a backstab ability the rogue has, and she'll do more damage than any character when attacking from behind with that weapon, so that's quite helpful.
Richard, it's actually you've just been able to finesse the game.
Yes,
So, yeah, that's why you didn't need the items. You're awesome.
I mean, you guys should see what they are, but I don't need them.
That's how Richard rolls into battle. Nude!
Oh, I can see.
Yes.
So these are all the. We have some other characters that I can talk to here.
Oh yeah, you can buy the Alchemist. He throws bombs. It's kind of fun if you want to purchase him. I think you probably have enough cash for it. Oh, no.
Okay. I spent
I
a bunch. So
yeah.
So you can unlock these. These aren't from the store. You can just unlock them whenever you want.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of what we're going to retool. We're going to have a lot of this play into the leveling up. There's just, as you collect mana and any kind of points, there'll be a sort of a party wide leveling system. So we'll add that to it. Things will get, it probably won't be the same interface, but certain items will only be available after a certain amount of experience. And then there's other things that open up for story reasons. And the list, I think, is currently 9 deep. We'll probably end up extending that just because there's so many variables you can end up tweaking from, nudge, and then the various abilities to parry where you don't get sent as hard back toward the flipper and backstab.
Party-wide effects as well as individual effects.
Got no in-laws either. I'm a bit of an honor.
I've heard enough.
This hunter appears to be a cabbage.
It looks better from far away.
Now, can you guys add in a character that just is ahead of Cabbage? And you can add him
For
to
you,
your party?
anything. Yes.
Actually,
I'm filing a ticket for it right now.
I had a question based on something Anthony was talking about earlier. You guys were talking about, this is sort of your fantasy, your traditional medieval-esque fantasy world. Maybe we could apply this formula to, say, a sci-fi setting, like Mass Effect, the pinball game, something like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, actually, all right. Here's a question. You guys, and it's not another game,
I doubt the barrel.
but you're going to be making a Rollers of the Realm, downloadable skin. What is the classic movie or fantasy novel that you want to add into your world here? What character do you want to appear from anything classic? Let's say anything before 1990.
I ain't much of a mother dog.
I beg your pardon?
Fantasy?
Sure.
Tony, do you have thoughts?
Come on, dude. Gandalf. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But is it Ian McKellen Gandalf?
Is there any other kind? Is there?
Yeah.
It's that bad animated version.
Oh,
Gandalf.
no, don't you dare! You keep that filth out of this room. God, I hate that movie. I'm sorry if anyone likes that, but just the Lord of the Rings animated movie just...
Or it could be a little conniving, sort of self-conscious golem rolling around, I suppose.
Oh, there you go.
That would be perfect.
I think this game's actually more a little on the obscure fantasy side, so it'd be maybe something from Thieves' World, some older, book series or whatever, lesser known. We have real offbeat characters, is why.
All I keep thinking about looking at this is, where is my Willow DLC?
Oh, nice.
Right in here. You get a little Val Kilmer.
We might get. I was gonna say we might be able to get Val Kilmer for this.
There you go. What else is he doing?
If you're gonna go Willow, go Lady Hawk. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Now we're talking. Broderick and a lady
Broderick,
turns into a bird.
Wolfball and Hawk multi-ball.
Oh my God! Robo Zed
my gosh.
in the chat just said Usagi Ojimbo pinball.
Yeah.
Nice.
We may already have Lady Hawk with a hunter. That's his team.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's a hawk and a wolf.
Yeah. I never thought of that, dude. That's
subconscious.
Awesome.
Can Kroll enter into this conversation?
So you need a glaive? You need the glaive
already
ball.
out of video game.
There you go.
Oh God. I brought this upon us. I brought the 80s references into the Rollers of the Realm. I don't know if I should apologize or celebrate.
There we go.
If you were a real Canadian, you'd do both. Woohoo! Sorry.
So now that I know about these upgrades, these treasure chests have greater importance.
Yeah, right now they do gold drops, and I think what we are going to do is we're going to have a way to get items by doing that.
Oh, got my mouse pointer just sitting on the screen. That's nice. I'm really digging
This is the camp. Not sure
Thanks,
how they'll
man.
greet us in the dark of the night.
You know, that is something you can always say. I know people find the idea. I've talked to people who find the idea of streaming still a little odd. You know, why do you want to watch a video game rather than actually play it? But for me, this like whets my appetite in a very big way. You know, like seeing the game played over this sort of period, I'm like, yeah, God, now I want to be able to prove that I can do it better than Richard. Nah, that's not.
Well, we will have leaderboards, guys, so
Yeah.
we can put that to the test.
Yeah, the idea is all of this will feed into what we hope will become a pretty robust community of players who will be playing basically the tournament tables. So, you know, you'll upgrade your characters, you'll collect characters, and you'll be using the same party you play in story mode in basically an arcade mode, which will really be themed around some sort of medieval tournament where you fight endlessly, fight these guys and try to obtain a high score. And that's where I think the real replay is going to be, in people grinding in the story, and searching for secret things in the story to get items that will improve their ability to get high scores in the arcade levels.
So when you play in the tournament boards, will you be able to unlock items that you wouldn't otherwise be able to in the campaign?
I think we'd like to have that. I would like to. I'd love to theme it to the point of it being a tournament. Like there's basically purses and items awarded that you'll know about. You'll know what you have to obtain in terms of points to get at those things. Plus, again, this is probably a Tony question, but in terms of leaderboards, there might be things we can do actively. And I don't know what the possibilities of that, but I'd love to be able to at least humor that or talk about doing it.
Yeah, we'll be leveraging as much Steam community stuff as we can, and possibly, I mean, we may do some kind of Facebook integration with the PC game, but only in the sense that you'll be able to challenge your friends' high scores. We're not trying to make this a Facebook social game by any means. That's not the kind of game it is. And I think, as I was saying earlier, like there is additional content that we have now that we're going to try to find ways to bring to this product, whether it's just, free expansions or paid DLC or whatever.
Well, talking about the Steam community and also something that's sort of traditionally happens with some pinball games, what about something like Steam Workshop? What about people making their own tables?
Well,
I love the telling silence.
In a perfect world, that would be awesome. I mean, I remember, Pinball Construction Set, back in the day, that was good fun. We would have liked to have made a construction set for level design, but the game is just too complex.
Well, and these all seem like very specific environments. These aren't like recycled over and over again. So I totally understand, but gotta ask.
Yeah, we would love to. That could be for the sequel or whatever. But yeah, unfortunately, I'd be happy to take sketches. We'll entertain community input like that. I'm serious.
The constructor set is actually just called Unity. I mean, like it's something you can already do, and what we're really doing is providing a story and interesting board configurations and things, and these are things that that people can do in those programs, and maybe we'll create a little community of role-playing, pinball role-playing, mods. Although it won't be of this; it'll just be Unity.
Cobaldicus in the chat has asked if the final boss battle will just be all your characters on the board at the same time.
It's like a super group. Well, you can get up to 10 party members, and I think, let me see, Dave, what's the maximum? You can have 3, depending on if you can keep your multi-balls in play. There'd be the dog multi-ball, the wolf, the hawk.
Yep.
What else?
And
and
there's
a playable
also
character, so that's 4 at once.
Yeah, and there's also the mage has a hailstorm spell which spawns like I think 10 hailstones that you can control with your nudge that sort of wing around the board and destroy things. It's a swarm of multi-balls. So technically, those are the limits. And the bigger question really was, well, concerned about how many can we actually get running reliably. But the bigger issues is also just the what gets nudged. If you have all the different characters moving, multi-balls aren't affected by nudge except for the hailstones. So there's always one clear character that's being nudged around. But I think with ball locks, I think we will entertain the idea, and certainly it's set up that you need to use all the characters in the final boss fight. You feel that they're all working together. That to me is more important because it probably isn't terribly fun to get all 10 going, because they're going to be all doing crazy things. You'll lose any sense of what any individual ball's doing. That was pretty apparent after we tried that once. It got a little spooky.
So wait a second, you can have the dog, the wolf, and the hawk, right? In addition to your character?
Yeah, you could, if you were able to keep the multi-balls going, you could get enough mana to then bring out someone else's multi-ball. And those are the 3 available. So you could have 4 at once, and then again, there's other special abilities that spawn. I think there's the Alchemist spawns multiple fire bombs that explode on contact. So I mean, you could technically get quite a bit going, and at some point we'll be testing to see what happens when you do that, because I don't think anyone's done it yet.
Just gonna throw this out there. You add a ferret ball, and then you can have the full Beastmaster array of companion creature. I had to get one more in there. I'm sorry.
And a tiny, tiny eyeball.
Guys, there is 5 minutes left in the stream. And for those of you that might just be joining us here on Twitch, we have been playing Rollers of the Realm, a pinball RPG by Phantom Compass. And the producer and founder of Phantom Compass, Tony Walsh, has been with us, and the creative director on the project, David. I'm sorry, David. I'm gonna mispronounce your last name. I was about to call you David Ellis, and that is not the case. It's David Evans.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've been watching Richard Mitchell, our reviews content director, slowly but surely rock his way through this medieval world. Richard, have you played 4 or 3 levels?
Something like 4-ish.
It's 4-ish?
Yeah.
And so this is just a smattering of what you will see in the final version of Rollers of the Realm when it ships later in 2014, or is available for download. Ships is not the word that people use anymore, because that's insane. Guys, do you have anything else that you would like to, some parting words for your fans?
Well, I guess if you... Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to come clean about something, and I'm just going to let Richard know, so it doesn't feel too bad about this, but you've obviously hit some bug, and it's not actually advancing the game to the second level.
I was going to mention that, David.
Yeah,
I assumed that there was some objective that I was not paying attention to.
Yeah, you know what? I've just felt bad for Richard. I couldn't help it. I mean, I know we've only known each other for...
Take him down a peg. Come on.
Yeah, but no, sorry, Tony. If there's anything constructive and positive about the game you'd like,
like a little
I could maybe
Hagrid guy
find
in
one
the
or two
castle.
things. I guess for anyone who wants to see this on their platform of choice, let us know what your interest is, because we listen. So if there's anything that you saw that you want to see more of, if there's any platforms that you want to see it come out on, let us know and we'll see what we can do.
Everybody write in and demand a Neo Geo version.
Wonder Swan or Get Out.
I'm here to help.
Nice.
Well, we usually end all of our streams by us usually leaping off a cliff or dying in some horrific way. That's not exactly possible, so I'm just gonna let the ball just go down the drain.
Everybody, thank you so much for turning into Joystiq streams. We air every single Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here on Twitch. And keep an eye on joystiq.com, because every now and again we have stream specials, like we did earlier today when we streamed the Titanfall beta. You can check that out in our archive, and you'll be able to relive this entire stream in our archive shortly. Check us out on twitter.com/joystiq. Search us on Facebook. Follow us here on Twitch. Follow us on YouTube. Also, all this month, we're doing a special event called 4 in February. We have a community page for it on Facebook. It's just 4 in February. Search it. All you got to do to play along with us is pick 4 games and try to finish them before the end of the month. It's awesome. I suck at 4 in February because I decided to pick all old NES games that are really hard. And please follow Phantom Compass on Twitter at Phantom Compass. You can go to their website, and Rollers of the Realm will be out soon in 2014. By the end of the spring, guys?
Yeah, I'd say late spring, early summer.
Late spring. And that will be on PC first. As Tony was saying, let them know if you want to see it on platforms that are not PC, if you want to see a Mac version, if you want to see a Pippin version, let them know. And that's about it, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. Dave, Tony, this has been so cool. Thank you.
A lot of fun.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, super fun.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching, and keep your eyes out for Rollers of the Realm.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.